Whenever you talk about Windows versus a Mac versus a Linux desktop, you can get pretty controversial. You have to watch your words. You have to be careful who you're speaking with. It could get heated, trust me. When you are discussing mobile phone operating systems, you better be ready for just as heated a discussion potentially. There are those that swear by Android-based products, those that you would pry the iOS product from Apple from their cold, dead hand. There's even people out there shouting from the rooftops about how awesome their Windows phone is. Once again, we won't choose sides in this nugget. I love them all. I've owned them all. I've used them all. Let's discover these mobile operating systems in this very unbiased nugget. So here they are head to head. Here we can have Google's Android operating system. This is a Linux-based OS from Google, and it's what we call an open operating system, which means this code is made available to developers. And what you have is a lot of potential apps here from a lot of different people, and you don't have what would it be called? The supervision of those applications like you would have in the other systems we see on screen. Then there is the Windows operating system, which has been ported to the mobile phone. And as you might guess, this is a very closed system because Windows is tightly controlling what gets developed and what is available in the Windows Store for that system. Here we have the iOS operating system that Apple places on their devices, and this is a closed system. We tend to call it vendor-based, though, and you can work with them just fine in creating applications as long as you use their approved software development kit and your applications meet the approval of the App Store process. And I'll tell you one more thought as we're looking at all three here. What I mentioned to you when it comes to operating systems and frustrating people, like the Mac will, you'll close an application on your Mac, for instance, but it doesn't really close. It's just hanging out down in your dock. You got to right click it to quit it, for example. That might drive someone in Windows crazy. The same types of things are going to happen here. You might be able to force touch your camera icon on the iPhone and get some pop-up things, and then you try that on your Windows phone and it doesn't work and you're all sad and depressed. There might be one way to close running applications on the Android phone, and there's a completely different and unintuitive way, according to you, to do this on the iOS-based phone. So this gets really, really controversial for users. They might have grown up with Android and have become very adept with it, and then they're forced to move to Apple as an example, and they can't seem to figure out how to do what they used to do on their Android phone, and they will end up hating the iPhone as a result. So we have to work carefully with our users to make sure we educate them on their mobile devices so that if they have a company issued one and they must use it, they don't dislike it. Now, what's really funny about all this is just like I was telling you when we were talking about the different operating systems, really there's not that much different going on. They're all copying each other. The concepts are very similar across the devices. Don't get mad at me. Don't get mad at me. Come on. Now, here's a great example. You're on your Android-based device and you want some cool app to assist you with productivity, or you just want to find out what all the fuss is about with Candy Crush Soda Saga, and you go into what's called a Play Store. On the iOS device, we go into what's called the App Store from Apple. On the Windows phone, we go into the Market, and we download our applications. These applications are very, very simple to install, and thankfully, these phones will have a simple procedure for you to uninstall an app, especially one that might not work on your particular operating system that you've downloaded it on. Now, I'm not really sure where the CompTIA exam authors were going here, but it seemed like they were a little obsessed with knowing the file extensions that are used across these different mobile operating systems. For instance, if you go to the Play Store and you download an app, it's a .apk type file that you're going to be downloading. If you're on a Windows phone, it's an XAP. If you're on an iOS, an Apple phone, it's an IPA. So I'll put these in the flashcards for you. Not really sure what the big deal is here because our end users are completely shielded from these extensions when they're visiting the appropriate stores and downloading their applications. Now, all your phones these days, I don't care what mobile operating system you went with, they all tend to feature accelerometers and gyroscopes. These allow you to use your device and tilt them in a whole bunch of different ways. And what's cool is, when you tilt it a different way, you'll typically get some new functionality based on that orientation that you're holding the phone in. I suppose this all does make it a little bit more difficult for grandma and grandpa to get used to their smartphone, but we advanced users love the new capabilities we get when we just tilt the phone a certain way. Now keep in mind, since your mobile device is a touch device, on some of them you're probably going to need to calibrate it. Yes, to have the screen react just how you want it to react to your tiny little or large finger. So you will go through a screen calibration with some of these mobile devices. Apple doesn't do this. In fact, if you're touching places and it's not working right, Apple actually wants you to reset the device in order to get their homegrown calibration back in place. Now, isn't it funny that we've been talking for so long about these devices and we haven't gotten into their communication capabilities yet? I mean, we're talking about running apps. We're talking about using them as basically a computer in our pocket, which everyone loves so much. On the iPhone, if we go down to settings, you're going to quickly see that there's Wi-Fi, there's Bluetooth, there's cellular capabilities. We can kill all of those very easily by throwing that airplane mode switch, which is a nice feature when we're sitting on the airplane and they ask us to turn off all these communication capabilities that have never been proven ever to interfere with anything in the cockpit. It's just a paranoid move. Anyways, something that captures a lot of people's attention is the fact that a device like this might be tracking your location. And you won't find that in the Bluetooth settings. You won't find it in the cellular settings. On this phone, we have to go down to privacy. And when we go into privacy, we see that location services is on, and we have the ability to share our location with specific family members. And not only are location services on, but notice all of these apps have the potential to go into those location services. So GPS and geo-tracking is certainly a hot topic these days with these phones, and you're going to be able to find a way to turn this off if it's something you're concerned about. Something else that's a big concern is whether or not you're able to use the Wi-Fi to make cell calls in order to save on cell service. And then accordingly, if you're in the cellular service, are you going to allow data to go over the cellular? This is where a lot of people get in trouble, especially with their kids. Their kids are going to be using cellular data for Angry Birds and all these other type applications that might want to communicate over the internet, and they're going to incur huge cellular charges as a result of data being used over what was initially intended for just a talk conversation. And of course, all of our phones are going to have some type of convenient graphical user interface for launching and organizing things. Notice on the iPhone, there are buttons down the bottom on a little dock, if you will. And if you decided, you know what, I use messages a heck of a lot more than I use settings, you could go ahead and swap that out. Now something just went to another page. I can drag that by holding it and bringing it over to this page. Notice I'm one of those really OCD types that likes all of his applications on one page on the iPhone. Oh, by the way, this is a searching feature when we move over to the left. But notice I like everything on one screen. So I create these folders for things, like I'll go ahead and take my watch icon and I'll drag it into the folder called Extras, because that's really where it should belong in my world. And I have everything tucked into these little folders. The Windows Phone, the Android phones, they're going to offer similar graphical user interface with similar launcher type capabilities, so you can quickly get to those applications you need. But what causes the biggest stir these days when it comes to our mobile operating systems? Well, it's the virtual assistants that help power them. In the Windows world, it's Cortana. In the Apple world, it's Siri. In the Google world, it's Google itself, or I should say the Android world. So you would say, okay, Google, and then ask Google a question, and it works brilliantly. Here is a demonstration of Siri. Let's see, what do I want to know? Let's try this one. Did the Boston Red Sox win yesterday?
The Red Sox lost a close one to the Orioles yesterday. The final score was 5-3.
And you can see why virtual assistants are constantly depressing me with their information. What is great about virtual assistants, though, is with every iteration across the different mobile operating systems, it seems like they can control more and more for you on your device, not just give you information. For instance, watch this. Play REM. But alas, while the phone can do so much great for us, it's the applications the phones run that people really tend to fall in love with. And Google and Apple have really led the phone craze because of the incredible number of applications that are available for these platforms and the assistance they get from Google and Apple when it comes to app developers. This is where Windows has had trouble really in the phone market share. They haven't done a good job yet of getting enough applications out there to compel people to consider Windows phones, I suppose. Now again, this is controversial because someone listening to me right now has a Windows phone and they absolutely adore it. In fact, think about it. We're still in a Windows world, so the phone's ability to integrate with the other Windows applications and other things Microsoft makes like Xbox, this is going to be a compelling reason to go that way. But I must mention the incredible development support Google and Apple provide. So you might wonder, what do I do with my phone? Why is it such a critical component of my day? Well, of course, if you know anything about me, I fly. So here we go. On the iPhone, this is X-Plane. I just released the brakes, gave it full throttle. We are moving down the runway here of some incredibly beautiful airport. It is a real airport with real scenery. And we've hit our nice airspeed to gently pull back on the stick. And we are flying. I'm going to raise the landing gear and we are going to take a quick little tour of this beautiful little community just off the end of this runway. By the way, we have different views. Here's a heads-up display. There's our airplane from the front, from the tower, from looking out a wing, I guess. You get the idea. So it is the applications that drive us to these amazingly powerful computers that sit right in our pockets these days. But then you realize, wait a minute, it is still a communication device. And I could quickly and efficiently call for emergency services. Or in the United States here, I could receive an Amber Alert about a missing child. How important is this? In fact, I was just sitting at a restaurant and all of our phones buzzed or rang at the same time. And I realized everybody was getting their Amber Alert and was looking at this information, and hopefully they would have some information about how to find this missing person. And if that wasn't enough, and that is probably the most powerful thing we can say about these mobile devices in how we can do good potentially in the community, the other thing that's going to be happening is we'll make lines shorter, hopefully. Sure, we're going to wave our phone in front of a device at the cash register to very efficiently and quickly pay for our items. This will use technologies like near field communications, NFC, in order to just get the thing close to send the signals that are required in order to transfer payment. Now, just as I say this, I realize there are plenty of you that are listening to me right now that are saying, I would never ever do this. It's like using your watch and waving it over a scanning object. I personally feel that these are some of the most secure ways that you could ever pay. Much more secure than handing your credit card to a waiter, but it's all up to individual preferences when it comes to privacy and information regarding your banking data. So I leave it to you to decide if you will take advantage of such conveniences we're beginning to see. So no matter what mobile operating system that you and I are forced to equip our end user with, we need to make sure we can teach them how to use these features safely and securely. And that's what we're going to be focusing on as we move throughout these nuggets on mobile devices. We need to make sure that if they're using these things for work, and hopefully they are, that they're as productive as possible with them and also as secure as possible with them. Well, I sure hope you found this nugget on mobile operating systems informative, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.